What if the most powerful prayer you ever prayed was the one you barely managed to whisper? What if the Rosary doesn't need your feelings to change your life, just your faithfulness? And what if your silence isn't a sign of failure, but the very space where God is doing his deepest work? In a world driven by sensation and speed, we've been trained to think that results should be immediate and emotions should always run high. That if we don't feel something, it must not be real. But the Rosary tells a different story, a story that doesn't rely on feelings but on trust, on showing up, on saying yes to God in the middle of numbness, noise, or even deep inner drought. Because here's the truth most of us don't hear enough. Prayer is still prayer, even when it's dry. The Rosary still matters, even when your mind wanders. Grace is still flowing, even when your heart feels cold. In fact, some of the most meaningful rosaries are the ones you pray when you feel absolutely nothing. You might pick up your beads after a long, overwhelming day. You don't feel inspired, you're not in a sacred mood, you're tired, distracted, maybe even a little resentful. But you begin. Bead by bead, you whisper the words, "Hail Mary, full of grace." Your thoughts drift. You forget which mystery you're on. You restart, you keep going. And in heaven, that rosary roars louder than you realize. Because what God sees is not your emotional experience. What he sees is your faithfulness, your perseverance, your love, stubborn, quiet, unseen by others. That's the beauty of the Rosary. It doesn't require you to be eloquent. It doesn't demand focus worthy of a saint. It just asks one thing, that you show up. In today's American culture, we're trained to evaluate everything by results, productivity, efficiency, feelings, instant rewards. But God's economy is different. In his kingdom, what counts is not speed but surrender, not performance but perseverance, not inspiration but intention. So when you pray the Rosary, especially in those seasons where your soul feels dry or distracted, you are engaging in something radical. You're stepping out of a performance-based mindset. You're resisting the cultural addiction to feeling spiritual and entering the deeper waters of trust. And trust, not feelings, is what truly transforms the soul. The Rosary is a sacred rhythm, an invitation to walk through the life of Christ with Mary as your guide. Each set of mysteries, joyful, sorrowful, glorious, and luminous, is not just a memory of holy events. It's a mirror for your life. As you meditate on them, even imperfectly, your own story begins to align with Christ's. Your joys, your losses, your questions, your hopes, they all find a home within the mysteries. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's about being present. That presence over time changes you. You may not see it at first. You may wonder, is this doing anything? But something begins to shift, slowly, quietly. In the background of your everyday life, your reactions start to soften. The anger that used to rise quickly, it simmers instead. The anxiety that wrapped around your mornings, it loosens its grip. You begin to carry yourself differently. People may not know what changed, but they notice something, a steadiness, a grounding, a peace that doesn't come from circumstances, but from somewhere deeper. That's the Rosary at work. One woman, grieving the death of her father, shared that she could barely pray in the months that followed. Her words felt hollow, her emotions were flat, but she kept picking up the beads every night. Some nights she only made it through a decade, some nights she fell asleep halfway through. But she didn't stop. "I didn't feel anything," she said, "but I was less alone." That's what the Rosary does. It doesn't eliminate the pain. It walks you through it, with Mary, with Christ. It tells you that even in the silence, even in the numbness, you are seen, you are held. And the effects aren't just spiritual. Science even confirms that repetitive prayer like the Rosary calms the brain, regulates breathing, and lowers anxiety. But more than that, the Rosary aligns your heart with heaven. It retrains your mind to see differently, to love more deeply, to hope more fiercely. In a culture that constantly pushes stimulation and speed, the Rosary invites stillness, focus, depth, and that's part of why it's so countercultural and so needed. Americans today are more anxious, more distracted, more overworked than ever before. We scroll, swipe, binge, and hustle, but we don't know how to rest. We don't know how to be still. We don't know how to stay. The Rosary gives us back that spiritual skill. It teaches us how to sit in silence without panic, to stay with prayer when there's no emotional payoff, to lean into mystery without having to understand everything. It's not easy, especially not at first. Many people give up on the Rosary because it feels boring or repetitive. But here's the secret. Repetition is the point. Just like we say, "I love you" every day to the people we care about. Not because they've forgotten, but because love is alive. Each Hail Mary is a whisper of love, a steady drumbeat of trust, a heartbeat of devotion. The Rosary trains the soul like a musician trains the ear or an athlete trains the body. Over time, your spirit begins to respond differently. You notice more, you listen better, you hold your peace longer. You carry grace with you into traffic, tension, temptation. And all of that starts not with fireworks, but with faithfulness. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be on fire. You just have to begin. That's the testimony of countless saints. Saint Therese of Lisieux, known for her little way, often spoke of praying simply, even without emotion. Saint Teresa of Calcutta endured decades of spiritual dryness, and yet she clung to her rosary like a lifeline. Why? Because she knew something most of us forget. God isn't looking for performers. He's looking for lovers. Lovers who stay when it's hard, who remain when it's quiet. And the Rosary is a school of that love. It forms your heart to be more like Mary's, open, surrendered, strong. Mary didn't follow Christ because it was easy. She followed because she trusted. From Bethlehem to Calvary, she stayed, she prayed, she believed, and she teaches us to do the same. When you pray the Rosary, you're not just remembering stories, you're participating in them. You're standing at the Annunciation with Mary's yes. You're weeping at the cross. You're rejoicing at the resurrection. And you're learning how to say yes in your own life. Yes to love, to trust, to healing, to God's will. Even if your yes is shaky, even if it's whispered through tears. Especially then. Because that's where grace does its best work, not in polished prayers, but in honest ones. So if you're holding the Rosary tonight with a heart that feels empty, keep going. If your mind drifts and you feel like you're failing, keep going. If your faith is tired and your hope is thin, keep going. Every bead matters. Every Hail Mary counts. Every moment you choose to pray, even without feeling, is building something eternal in you. That's not just Catholic tradition, that's spiritual truth. And in a culture chasing quick fixes and emotional highs, your quiet, steady Rosary might just be the most revolutionary act of faith you can make. You won't see the change overnight. You might not even feel it after weeks or months of praying. But something is happening. Deep inside your soul, a hidden work begins. It's like water flowing over stone. Slow, persistent, gentle. But over time, it reshapes everything. This is why the Rosary has endured through centuries of change, war, persecution, and progress. Because it's not rooted in trends. It's not built on feelings. It's built on truth. And truth doesn't expire. Each mystery you pray carries the weight of eternal reality. The joyful mysteries teach you how to welcome God's will, even when it surprises or disrupts. The sorrowful mysteries teach you how to carry pain with purpose. The glorious mysteries fill you with hope that death is never the end. The luminous mysteries call you to reflect the light of Christ in a world that prefers shadows. And even when your mind wanders, yes, even then, something sacred is happening. Because the Rosary is not a test of concentration. It's a school of presence, a sanctuary of stillness, a doorway to grace. When you show up and pray, you're telling God, I trust you more than my mood. I believe in you more than I believe in how I feel. I want to be close to you, even when it feels like you're far away. That act of spiritual maturity forms a soul ready for real relationship, not just emotional encounters. And here's the thing, you're not the only one who's ever struggled with this. People across the US and beyond, young and old, cradle Catholics and new converts, have picked up the Rosary during times of crisis and clung to it like a lifeline. A soldier in Afghanistan, a nurse on night shift, a mother with a sick child, a college student battling depression. All of them prayed when it was hard, and all of them found something more than what they expected. They didn't always find immediate peace, but they found presence, they found strength, they found Mary. And that's one of the Rosary's greatest gifts. It reminds us we're not alone. When you pray the Rosary, you're praying with Mary, the same woman who said yes to God when she didn't understand, the same woman who stood beneath the cross, broken yet believing, the same woman who waited in silence on Holy Saturday, trusting that something unseen was unfolding. She's not a distant figure. She's a mother. And like every good mother, She walks with her children through their darkest hours. She doesn't wait for you to feel holy. She meets you where you are and prays with you anyway. That's the hidden strength of the Rosary. It's not just a devotion, it's a relationship. And that relationship changes you. One young man shared that he started praying the Rosary during a season of intense temptation. He didn't think it would help. He felt unworthy, even fake. But a friend told him, just start. Even if it's awkward, even if you miss days, just start. So he did. One mystery a day, sometimes less. But over time, the temptation lost its power, not because he became stronger, but because he was no longer fighting alone. That's what the Rosary does. It brings heaven into the fight. It wraps you in the prayers of Mary, the presence of Christ, and the intercession of saints throughout history. And the best part? You don't have to feel it for it to be real. We're so used to evaluating everything by how it makes us feel. Did the workout feel good? Did the food taste good? Did the prayer inspire me? But the deepest things in life, the most transformational things, don't always feel good in the moment. They feel faithful. The Rosary is one of those things. When you pray through tears, through stress, through doubt, you're doing more than surviving. You're worshipping. You're saying, God, you are still worthy of my time, my voice, my heart, even when I don't feel anything in return. And that kind of faith moves mountains. It also prepares you for life's inevitable trials. Because let's face it, life in America today is filled with pressure. Rising costs, cultural division, personal loss, uncertainty about the future. We're carrying so much, and often the last thing we feel is spiritual. We feel tired, disconnected, uncertain. But the Rosary steps in as a stabilizer. It gives your soul a rhythm, a sacred pulse. It reorients your heart when everything else is spinning, and it does so quietly. No flashing lights, no instant breakthroughs, just peace, just presence, just prayer. That kind of prayer builds resilience, not just spiritual resilience, but emotional and psychological strength too. Because when your faith isn't tied to your feelings, you can endure more than you ever thought possible. You become the calm in someone else's storm. You become a steady presence in your workplace, your family, your friend group. And you may not realize it, but others will. They'll ask why you're different, why you carry peace like a hidden treasure. And you'll know it's because you've spent time in the presence of Christ through Mary's prayers. You've walked the mysteries, you've sat in the silence, you've trusted in the dry times, and you've been changed, not through noise, but through quiet faithfulness. Not through fireworks, but through fire, slow-burning, purifying, enduring. That's the power of the Rosary, especially when you don't feel it. So don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait to feel inspired. Just start. Hold the beads, whisper the prayers, let your soul rest in the rhythm. And trust, truly trust, that God is doing something in you far beyond what you can see. You might not notice it right away, but others will. They'll start to sense something different about you. The way you listen more patiently, the way you respond with gentleness instead of sarcasm, the way peace clings to you like a quiet fragrance. And when they ask what changed, you'll pause, reflect, and maybe even surprise yourself when you realize it's the Rosary. This is how the Rosary works, not through drama or spectacle, but through transformation that feels natural, rooted and strangely steady. It sneaks up on you. It doesn't ask for a spotlight. It just asks for your consistency. And that's something uniquely challenging in today's American culture. We're bombarded with noise, novelty, and urgency. We want everything now. Results, progress, affirmation. But the Rosary invites us into a counter rhythm, a slow rhythm, one that says what's eternal is never rushed. It tells us that transformation is not always loud, healing is not always instant. And holiness isn't about dramatic moments, it's about steady ones. Each time you pick up the beads, even when your hands are tired or your thoughts scattered, you're stepping into sacred time. You're aligning yourself with generations of saints and sinners who dared to believe that perseverance matters, that love is built on repetition, that grace often works best when it feels weakest. The Rosary teaches you to keep going. One woman, after years of battling depression, shared that her Rosary became a kind of emotional scaffolding. It gave me something to hold when everything else felt like it was falling apart, she said. It didn't cure me, but it carried me. She didn't always finish 5 decades. She didn't always stay awake, but she came back. night after night, and little by little something shifted. That shift is real. It's subtle but profound. It's in how you breathe, how you wait, how you notice others' pain. It's in how your life becomes less reactive and more responsive, less about control and more about communion. Because the Rosary isn't just about you. It's about connecting to Mary, to Jesus, to the body of Christ across the globe. It's about realizing that your quiet prayers are echoing with millions of others, that your struggle to concentrate is mirrored by someone else, praying in a hospital room or in a jail cell or in a quiet chapel after hours. And somehow, mysteriously, all of these voices blend into one powerful chorus. That's what makes the Rosary timeless. It transcends borders, generations, and emotional states. Whether you're on a mountaintop retreat or stuck in traffic, kneeling in church or lying in bed, your prayers matter. They're heard, they're held, they're woven into God's great tapestry of mercy. And Mary is right there, weaving with you. She doesn't ask you to be perfect. She just asks you to be present. You might be juggling kids, battling addiction, dealing with loss, fighting temptation, recovering from failure. Whatever your reality, the Rosary can meet you there. It doesn't sanitize your pain, it sanctifies it. It holds your brokenness and whispers, "You're not alone. Keep going. Grace is here." This is why the Rosary has remained powerful in every age, but it's especially crucial now. In a culture craving control and clarity, the Rosary invites surrender and mystery. It's not a tool to escape reality. It's a way to enter it more deeply, with courage and with God. And when you do it daily, even imperfectly, you start to see your life differently. You start to find Jesus in the mundane. You notice that the joyful mysteries are hidden in your family dinners and unexpected news, that the sorrowful mysteries echo in your moments of grief and loss, that the glorious mysteries sneak into your life through answered prayers and sudden peace, that the luminous mysteries show up when you choose truth over convenience. You begin to realize your own life is becoming a mystery, a story where Jesus walks beside you and Mary prays over you. And that realization? That's the Rosary working. Not because you crafted it perfectly, but because you showed up, you trusted, you surrendered. There's something so American about wanting control, about thinking if we just try harder, optimize more, achieve bigger, we'll finally be at peace. But the Rosary doesn't work that way. It's not a system. It's not self-improvement. It's surrender. You're not climbing a spiritual ladder. You're learning to rest in the arms of a mother who knows the way. Mary is not just a figure from history. She's a present help. She intercedes. She understands. She walks with you in ways you may not see until you look back and realize she's been there the whole time. So don't overthink it. Don't wait until your mind is perfectly still or your heart is overflowing with feeling. Just start. Pray in your car, pray on your lunch break, pray while folding laundry. Pray when the only word you can muster is help. That's all the Rosary asks of you. Presence, not perfection. And with that presence comes peace. Not the kind that always feels like fireworks, but the kind that lets you sleep better, love deeper, forgive faster, endure longer. That's the quiet revolution of the Rosary, and it's waiting for you, bead by bead, breath by breath, mystery by mystery. You don't need to earn that peace. It's already offered. And the Rosary is one of the clearest paths to receive it, not because the words themselves are magic, but because the act of praying reshapes you from the inside out. The Rosary is less about solving problems and more about placing yourself into the presence of the one who can. Each time you pray it, you're stepping into sacred history. You're echoing the words of Mary, Gabriel, and Jesus himself. You're moving through the most important events in salvation history, not just as a passive listener, but as a participant. Your yes to prayer becomes a reflection of Mary's yes to God. Your perseverance becomes a mirror of Christ's endurance. You don't have to do it perfectly, you just have to be willing. And that willingness is powerful. We often underestimate the spiritual weight of simply choosing to pray, especially in a society that glorifies visible success, measurable outcomes, and emotional highs. But some of the most beautiful things grow in the dark, hidden soil of faithfulness. The Rosary is like that, planted deep in the ordinary, watered by repetition, and bloomed over time through grace. That's why so many people, especially Americans facing stress, grief, depression, or uncertainty, turn to the Rosary. It's not complicated. It's not overwhelming. It's accessible. It meets you right where you are. Whether you're in recovery, in the middle of a breakup, in a hospital waiting room, or in the quiet mess of a tired life, the Rosary offers one thing: space. A space to breathe. A space to remember. A space to reconnect with what truly matters. One man shared that during a time of unemployment, he felt like a failure. He couldn't provide, couldn't fix his situation, and couldn't even pray with enthusiasm. But he started praying 1 decade of the Rosary each morning while walking his dog. It wasn't spiritual, he said. It was survival. But after a few weeks, something shifted. He wasn't just praying to get out of the storm. He was finding peace in the middle of it. That's what the Rosary teaches. That healing isn't always escape. It's often endurance. That peace isn't found in perfect conditions. It's found in perfect presence. And that faith isn't about always feeling God. It's about trusting He's near, even in silence. Because silence is not absence. And dryness is not distance. In fact, some of the holiest saints walked through decades of spiritual dryness, St. Teresa of Calcutta being one of the most famous, but she never stopped praying. She never gave up the Rosary, she stayed. And in staying, she became holy. That's what the Rosary calls us to, staying. Staying when it's dry, staying when it's boring, staying when it's painful. Because staying is an act of love. And in a throwaway culture that tells us to quit when it's hard, that kind of love is revolutionary. When you pray the Rosary in seasons of struggle, you're not just preserving your faith, you're deepening it. You're training your soul for spiritual resilience. You're building roots that will hold fast when the storms come. And those roots don't grow in times of ease. They grow in resistance, in silence, in the press of daily life. So when the Rosary feels like a grind, don't give up. That grind is grace at work. It's sanding down the rough edges. It's forming patience. It's building discipline. And more than anything, it's keeping you connected to the source of peace, Jesus Christ, through His mother. You're not wasting time. You're investing it in eternity. Because even when your feelings go flat, your soul remembers the rhythm. Even when your emotions feel numb, your spirit is responding to grace. Even when it feels like you're just going through the motions, those motions matter. They're movements of the heart, even if you don't recognize it yet. And that's how deep transformation happens. Not in sudden bursts of inspiration, but in the slow, quiet turning of the heart toward God. Day after day, bead after bead, mystery after mystery. There's no perfect environment for the Rosary. You don't need candles, music, or solitude. You just need desire. And even that desire doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be real. God honors even the smallest steps, even the messiest prayers, even the most distracted efforts, because He sees your heart. And Mary, our mother, holds your intention with love. She doesn't need your perfection. She just wants your presence. She understands what it means to wait, to grieve, to trust in the dark, and she will pray with you even when all you can do is whisper. That's the beauty of the Rosary. It's not a performance, it's a promise that you're not alone, that God is still working, that grace is still flowing, that love is still holding you together even when everything else feels like it's falling apart. So hold the beads, pray the prayers, rest in the rhythm, and trust that something sacred is unfolding within you, around you, and beyond you. You may not feel it yet, but one day you'll see it. One day you'll look back and realize something remarkable. You've changed. Not all at once, and maybe not in the ways you expected, but your responses will have softened. Your capacity for patience will have deepened. Your trust in God will have become more reflex than effort. You'll find yourself less reactive, more peaceful, more able to stand still in the middle of storms you once feared. And when you trace it back, you'll realize it was the Rosary. It was the decision to keep praying when nothing made sense. It was the discipline to show up even when your heart felt dry. It was the quiet repetition of surrender, whispered bead by bead in the midst of ordinary chaos. The Rosary doesn't promise an easy life, but it does promise a holy one. Not because you earn holiness, but because the Rosary keeps putting you in the presence of the one who is holy. And over time, you begin to reflect what you behold. Each mystery you pray is not just about Christ's life, it's about your own. The joyful mysteries teach you to embrace your life with gratitude, even in the unknown. The sorrowful mysteries give you strength to carry your own crosses with dignity and grace. The glorious mysteries anchor you in hope when life feels like a grave. The luminous mysteries challenge you to live boldly for the truth in a world that avoids it. You begin to live differently, not louder, but deeper, more grounded, more rooted, more connected. And this is exactly the kind of life the world needs right now. In a nation where noise is constant and identity is often wrapped in performance, the Rosary calls you back to something eternal. It calls you into quiet, into mystery, into love without conditions. One young mother shared that she started praying the Rosary while rocking her colicky newborn at 3 a.m. "I didn't know what else to do," she said. "I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and constantly doubting myself. But the Rosary gave me words when I had none. It gave me rhythm when life felt chaotic. It gave me a moment to breathe." And that's the secret so many discover. The Rosary doesn't change your circumstances. It changes your capacity to carry them. It doesn't numb your pain, but it makes your pain holy. It doesn't remove the cross, but it makes you stronger under its weight. That strength is quiet. It doesn't always feel like triumph, but it shows up when you need it most. In the courage to forgive, in the peace that calms your panic, in the clarity to choose what's right when everything in you wants to give up. And the more you pray, the more you begin to see the invisible work of grace in your life. You begin to catch glimpses of God's hand in places you once thought were abandoned. You start to recognize Mary's gentle influence in the softened conversations, the unexpected opportunities, the quiet nudges toward mercy. That's not coincidence, that's connection. And the Rosary forges it bead by bead. Even in the midst of modern distractions, phones buzzing, schedules crammed, endless news feeds, the Rosary creates a sacred interruption. It says, stop, look deeper, listen longer. It's a small act of rebellion in a world that values rush over rest, noise over nuance, emotion over endurance. But the Rosary invites endurance, and endurance births character. And character, hope. Hope that does not disappoint. This is not abstract theology, it's daily life. It's getting up, choosing prayer over panic, presence over productivity, trust over control. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. You won't need to force peace anymore, it will find you. You won't have to chase God, He'll meet you. Because the Rosary draws you into His rhythm. And in that rhythm, you become more fully yourself, who you were created to be. That's why the saints clung to the Rosary like a weapon. Not because they needed religious noise, but because they knew what it did. They knew that every Hail Mary was a strike against despair. Every Our Father was a reminder of trust. Every Glory Be was a declaration that God is still on the throne. You may not be a saint yet, but the Rosary is the path that leads there. And it doesn't matter where you start. You could be broken, angry, numb, distant, confused. None of that disqualifies you. In fact, it qualifies you. Because Mary doesn't wait for you to be perfect, she meets you in your imperfection. She takes your distracted, tired prayers and wraps them in her own. She presents them to her Son, not as flawed attempts, but as offerings of love. And Jesus, always merciful, receives them with joy. So when the Rosary feels hard, keep praying. When the world feels heavy, keep praying. When your soul feels silent, keep praying. Because something sacred is happening, even now. And in time, you'll come to see what that something sacred really is. It's not just about feeling better, it's about becoming better, not in the worldly sense of perfection or success, but in the eternal sense of sanctity. The Rosary forms you into someone who can love more freely, forgive more deeply, and trust more fully. Someone whose peace doesn't rise and fall with circumstances. Someone whose joy is rooted in something no suffering can touch. That's what Mary wants for you. That's what Jesus wants for you. And that's what the Rosary makes possible. Because every repetition is a return to the heart of the gospel. Every Hail Mary is an echo of the Incarnation. Every mystery leads you closer to Christ, not just in memory, but in presence. The Rosary doesn't just tell the story of salvation, it draws you into it. And by praying it daily, even in weakness, even in dryness, you're becoming part of that story. You're not praying alone, you're joining a communion. The saints are with you, the Church is with you, Mary is with you, Christ is with you. Your voice is one of many in an unbroken chain of faith stretching across continents and centuries. That's not sentiment, it's reality. and it should give you strength. Because when your voice is shaking, theirs are strong. When your faith feels fragile, theirs are fierce. And when you feel too small or unworthy to keep going, they remind you, keep going anyway. Because grace is not for the perfect, it's for the willing. And you have been willing. Every time you chose to pray instead of scroll, to whisper instead of worry, to stay instead of quit, that was grace at work. That was transformation happening. It doesn't need to feel spectacular to be holy. The Rosary is a slow miracle, not a flash of lightning, but the steady rising of the sun. You don't always notice it until you realize the darkness is gone. And even if the night lingers longer than you want, the Rosary gives you light, one mystery at a time. It becomes a sacred anchor in a world constantly drifting, a refuge from fear, a shield against temptation, a healing balm for wounds too deep for words. And all it asks is that you keep showing up. That's why this video matters. That's why this message must be shared. Because so many people are giving up on prayer too soon. They think their distractions disqualify them. They think their lack of emotion means it's not working. But the truth is, those are often the very moments when the Rosary works best. Because when you keep praying in the silence, in the sorrow, in the spiritual fog, you are saying something powerful to God. I trust you more than I trust how I feel. That kind of trust moves heaven. So wherever you are in your journey, start again. Pick up the beads. Begin with 1 decade if that's all you can give. Whisper the prayers even if they feel empty. Trust that they're full in heaven. And know this, Mary is praying with you. Jesus is listening, and grace is working. Bead by bead, mystery by mystery, day by day. This is not the end of your story, it's a turning point. And here at Holy Path Insight, we invite you to keep walking with us, deeper into truth, deeper into faith, deeper into the mystery of God's love. Subscribe to our channel for more reflections that meet you where you are and lead you where God is calling you. Share this with someone who needs the strength to keep praying. And never forget, the Rosary is changing you, even when you don't feel it. Because God is always faithful, and Mary is always near.